Hello, welcome to this special workshop on reimagining political parties in the age of AI. For those new to the AI and democracy community, my name is Bella Roberts, founder of ANTIPARTY, and hosting this event together with the UK Democracy Network. So a bit more about your hosts. The ANTIPARTY Collective was born from the partygate scandal and looks to transcend the two-party system with collective intelligence for systems change. We seek to inspire new solutions to old problems, holding on to the core values of connection, community, and creativity. The UK Democracy Network works to strengthen the relationships and connections between organisations, projects, and individuals working to build a healthier democracy in the UK. The network is open to all those working in and around issues of democracy, power, and voice in the UK, and providing you with the resources, information, and collaboration opportunities to take your work to the next level. So in a slightly different format to our usual webinars, I'm delighted to be joined by Sean and David and potentially Chris from Unanimous AI. And I'm especially grateful for you joining us so early in the morning Pacific time. I think it's an ungodly hour of 5 a.m. over there. And so for the rest of the attendees, as you know, their platform Thinkscape is what we'll be using to capture our discussion today, but more on that in a moment. So before I hand over to the team at Unanimous AI, a reminder of the topic today, political parties. In the UK and US, especially, we have had the two-party system for as long as we can remember. However, George Washington, the first president of the United States, warned in his farewell address that political parties will form factions of men more loyal to their party than to their country. Furthermore, John Adams, the second president of the United States, mentioned, "There is nothing which I dread so much as a division of the Republic into two great parties, each deranged under its leader and concerting measures in opposition to each other. This, in my humble apprehension, is to be dreaded as the greatest political evil under our Constitution." That was still part of the John Adams quote, by the way, not me. So how have we ended up with this highly divisive and bipartisan system that we have today? Is there another way, especially with the technological means of today, including AI? We've seen recently in the UK AI-powered candidates standing for elections, such as AI Steve and Andrew Gray, who's joining us on the call today. I'm pleased to see Andrew's here. Yep. So can AI help to solve the issues of trust, transparency, and representation that is lacking in politicians today? So referring to a prompt sheet based on the paper by Dr. Kate Dommett, we will just explore how much of what people want to see in parties today can be filled by an AI. Following discussion, we will analyze the comments and progress what we've captured today to future events and potentially even a chapter in a new book on party innovation. So really glad to see all of you, and thanks so much for putting your introductions into the chat. And without further ado, I'd love to hand over to David to speak a bit more about the work he's been doing at Unanimous AI.
Thank you, Bella. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I am speaking to you from actually the East Coast of the United States, from Washington, D.C. My colleagues from Unanimous are also either here on the East Coast or on the West Coast. We're a fully remote organization here in the U.S. So I'm very happy to talk to you briefly a little bit about Unanimous AI and the type of solutions that we have built, technologies that we have built. And then we are going to actually use our Thinkscape platform to do some real-time AI-supported deliberation. And then when we're done, we'll actually show you some of the output and some of the tools that can be used afterwards, and open it up for further discussion about the utility of these types of solutions. So as mentioned, my name is David Baltax. I'm the President and Chief Intelligence Officer here at Unanimous AI. And Unanimous AI specifically has developed or focuses on developing technologies that amplify the intelligence of collaborating groups. So we have developed a form of artificial intelligence that is focused on improving and amplifying collaborative intelligence of network teams. That's our central focus. And we do so, our technology, actually our core technology, is known as artificial swarm intelligence, or swarm AI, because it's actually inspired by nature, by the social dynamics of certain social creatures. Think of flocks of birds, schools of fish, swarms of honeybees. In fact, our technology takes specific inspiration from each of these different groups. And since humans haven't learned to, since humans didn't evolve what biologists term as swarm intelligence, this method of sharing and interacting information and providing information in real-time systems, we developed technology that enables groups of people to be able to do so. We have a variety of tool sets. Our initial platform is known as Swarm itself. And the Swarm platform is focused on allowing teams to do evaluations, make decisions, do assessments, really focused on what's known as closed-ended questions. And it's a graphical interface, and it can be used anywhere in the world. Our solution, then we also have our mind mix solution, which is focused on being able to allow groups to get to optimize and enhance priority lists, priority sets. But we all know that just inherently, that the best way for information and for groups to be able to develop new ideas, to really come up with creative solutions, to be able to fully explore topics, brainstorm, is to be able to tackle unstructured problems, to be able to work with problems where we don't know what the answer set is. We don't know what to assess. We're actually really focused on that exploration, that explorative process that allows us to get to a set of answers and get to express our opinions and create or develop together what our solution could be. So we've sought to expand our basic artificial swarm intelligence solution to incorporate the opportunity for conversation, and we're able to do so by combining generative intelligence, or generative AI rather, to actually to enhance our swarm AI solution to be able to produce conversational swarm intelligence. And that's what we're going to be using today. The conversational swarm intelligence technology is manifests itself in our Thinkscape platform. The Thinkscape platform, as you'll see in a minute, today it's a text-based chat, text chat-based, that everybody can come in and participate in a chat discussion. But our technology is actually designed, and by next year, we expect to actually be able to evolve it into video conferencing, such as Zoom, such as Microsoft Teams. The system we'll use today is purely text chat. And what you'll see is when you join the Thinkscape platform, and you'll just do it from your standard web browser, you will join into the system. Our moderator, Chris, will provide instructions. We'll take a couple of minutes of instructions. And what I wanted you to understand, and we'll go over this in more detail once you've joined, but we all know intrinsically and through our experience that when you get a large group of people into a conversation, that kind of productive deliberation works well when you have about 4 to 7 to 8 people. Science says when you get above 7 to 8, that's when it starts to break down. The reason it breaks down is because there's not enough airtime for everyone to talk. There's too much wait time for everybody to have an opportunity to participate. We all know just from our own experiences in business and personal life that when you get above that number, you just start to have monologues, you have speeches, people are just talking to be heard. And then when you get, into 20 people or more, it really devolves into chaos. It revolves into a Twitch stream. It becomes a Discord channel where everybody's just talking past one another. That's not what we're trying to manage. We're trying to actually have a cohesive and collaborative conversation, productive and meaningful conversation. So what do you do when you have large groups? Well, we solved this problem, and you'll see as you get into the Thinkscape system, let's imagine you have 100 people. When you come into the system, they are broken up into small groups. We will all be broken up into groups of anywhere from 4 to 7, depending on how many people have joined. And we go into our own think tanks, and we can have local conversations there because that's a maximized number of people. But that's not a swarm. That's not a swarm intelligence. That's not a full system. That's a cocktail party, right? You have lots of separate conversations going on. So what we do is we embed in each of those rooms, in each of those individual local conversations, we embed an AI agent. And that conversational AI agent is doing two things. It is listening to what is being discussed in the local room, and it is also sharing those ideas with its sisters in the other rooms, so that they can express to that they can express in each of those, we call them think tanks, ideas that have been surfaced in other rooms, in other spaces. And this way, all of those local conversations are actually being cross-pollinated. They are all having ideas shared with them from the different rooms, so that the entire group can be considering the most important ideas, or the ideas that are being brought up across all of it. And so in this way, we're actually able to we can network a large group of people to be able to have meaningful and productive conversation and be able to lead to an overall outcome. Okay, that's a lot of talk. Shall we, Bella, you're nodding. I recognize there's a lot of talk. So what I'd like to do now is if you'll see, Sean, are we ready? And Chris, are we ready to move into Thinkscape?
We're ready.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Looking ready on my end. Yep.
All right, great. So Sean or Chris, if you'll post into the chat in Zoom the link for the Thinkscape session. And then all you need to do, everybody, is just click on that link. It will open up a web browser, and you will be able to join. I believe we're doing this all completely anonymously today, Sean?
Correct, we are, Chris, but
Okay.
yes, we are.
Great, thank you. So you'll join anonymously into Thinkscape. And once we have seen that everybody has joined, then I'll turn it over to Chris, and we'll start going through our exercise today. What I'll ask is, as we go, leave Zoom on mute. We want to capture all of the communication that is happening, all of the ideas that are being discussed, have them all in the Thinkscape platform. If it's not typed into the chat in Thinkscape, the system doesn't have an opportunity to process that data. So we'll stay we'll stay on mute here on Zoom, unless anybody's having any kind of technical difficulties. Then we're happy to use the chat here in Zoom to discuss that. Bella, did I leave anything out?
Great, no, thanks so much. Yeah, ready to jump in a second. I just wanted to, revisit the prompt sheet, which I attached back in the chat. If hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at that before the session today and have it open in front of them now. But, thank you also for some of the members here today who already added their comments and started to have a think about this subject of reimagining political parties, and just wanted to read out quickly a couple. So there's one from Martin about, distinguishing between design corruption, operational corruption, and cultural corruption, and saying that there's a whole hierarchy of institutions that are corrupt, and the democracy implementation itself is corrupt, and no amount of small tweaking can change that. But then what we need to do is analyze the way that the systems are corrupt and invent tools for identifying and classifying corruption, so we can challenge it. And this is where AI would be most useful. He's saying that to eliminate conflict between ideologically opposed parties by automatically passing the dialogue and facilitating, moderating the discussion. So thanks for that, Martin. Feel free to elaborate on your comments, and if anyone has anything to add or reflect on that, we can add that to the discussion shortly. And Liz also actually saying that one of the critical aspects of a political party is its values and how much members align with those values. So profiling the values of members and aligning them with the stated values of the organization is something AI could do, but it has to be very carefully managed. Thanks again for all your comments so far. And I think if everyone has no technical connection issues, let's all jump into the Thinkscape link.
You'll note just a very quick note on the process. As Chris, the moderator, you see the question appear at the top of the screen, and then you have the opportunity to start having that conversation with your fellows who are inside of your local think tank, and you can have that conversation. After a while, as you have surfaced ideas and as other groups have surfaced ideas, you will start to see what those ideas are as other ThinkBots share the important ideas that have come up in other rooms with your room, and you can interact with those as you will. So just recognize that that was a warm-up, a compressed question, and now we'll move into a more relaxed or a more comfortable pace. What you'll also note is with just a few minutes left in the time period, we will give you the Thinkscape platform will provide a summary of the top ideas, and we're going to try and see if the group can come to a consensus, see if there's just a single idea. This is actually a configurable item. This is how we've set it up for this demonstration today. We don't have to force a group to come to a consensus. We can also, in other cases, we could be presenting media. For instance, we could be presenting charts and graphs. You could be presenting a short video or streaming video or anything else that you wanted the group to be considering as they were talking about it or as they were discussing it. But for today's purposes, just understand that we are really focused on the conversation and seeing where we can bring this conversation today over the course of a little over 10 minutes for this next question. And with that, I will have Chris, we can move on to our first conversation question.
And this was on the prompt sheet. So yeah, which of these 7 principles will AI be most helpful to political parties? And these are the principles that came up from the paper by Dr. Kate Tommett through her research and surveys a few years ago, so before the ChatGPT boom, but the last time that this was ever studied and to some great extent. So at the time, yeah, people wanted accessibility, communication, inclusivity, integrity, principles, reliability, and transparency to be fulfilled within political parties, or just to see that those principles take shape in political parties. So out of those, which can be most fulfilled by an AI nowadays? few seconds left. And I'm not sure if anyone's been using the microphone tool as well. But that's also possible.
Thanks for pointing that out, Bella. I realize I didn't mention that. If you are, there is a microphone icon there in the text enter box that will allow you to do speech to text rather than have to continue to type. So feel free to experiment with that or use that if that's more appropriate. So great, we finished our first question. I hope you found that discussion useful. When we're finished with this next question, I will we'll come back to Zoom and I'll show you some of the back end analytics that are available as well, and we can open it up to further conversation. But I think right now, Chris, if you'll sort us into our new think tanks, and we will post the next question, our final question for this demonstration.
All right, we've sent everyone to new think tanks, and we will consider this next question. The next question is, can the political party be replaced by AI? Why or why not?
And as a reminder, make sure to engage with the rationale, not just simply make your statement, but also give us the reasons. Excellent. Thank you all very much for for participating in this very lively conversation about this incredibly interesting and complex set of issues. What I'd ask right now, we're done with that part of the demonstration. If you return your attention to the Zoom screen. I think, Bella, we kind of have, I think we have two opportunities here. I'd like to take, if it's all right with you, I'd like to take a few minutes about and show some of the additional analytics are available with Thinkscape, so that the group can get a bit more of a perspective about the technology itself. At the same time, though, I also recognize that the topic of discussion is so interesting that you might want to continue that and have that conversation here also in Zoom. So I would happy to balance that however you like. But if it's all right with you, is it okay if I take a couple of minutes to kind of show a little bit about the back end of Thinkscape?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, David. But just quickly, what is the next steps with all the different rooms that we just had there? Are we going to revisit that, or will that be after the session? We'll follow up with the group. And I think there's a question from someone in the group saying, should we completely close the Thinkscape?
Yes, you can go ahead and close Thinkscape at this point. We won't be coming back to Thinkscape right now. So thank you very much for participating with that. Just in general, if you're interested in learning more about Thinkscape itself, Thinkscape.ai is your best first website to go to, and you can contact us via that, or you can reach out to Sean at unanimous.ai. Feel free to go over to unanimous.ai as well if you're interested in learning more about our other technologies and the underlying Swarm AI technology as well. But for Thinkscape specifically, Thinkscape.ai will be your easiest first place to go. So okay, so you had a good sense now, hopefully, of what it's like to participate in a AI enabled discussion. Here we had roughly 20 people who are participating. There really is no upper limit. With this methodology of scaling by creating separate local rooms and using the AI to be able to share ideas across the different rooms, we can actually scale this up for hundreds of people. The largest we've run to date is around 200, 250. We would be happy to, if you have a large group that you wanted to try this with, we'd be happy to work with you on that. But from a technical perspective, there's really no technical limit on the numbers of people that we can participate, because as you can see, that methodology scales very efficiently. One of the things what I will go ahead and do right now is share my screen. And what you're seeing here is what we refer to as the Insight Studio. Insight Studio is the Thinkscape platform, as you've just seen, but afterwards, right? This is an opportunity for researchers and analysts and anybody else to be able to come back and explore and revisit a Thinkscape session that has occurred. So this is one that we did with 110 adults in the United States, and asked them about, this was part of a session we were talking about the development of new nuclear power plants in the United States. And here I have this play bar here at the bottom, and I've got it set at 3 times, but we can just kind of watch here as people have their conversation. Now, this is in the moderator view, but I can actually move into any of the think tanks. So here I go into think tank 2, or I can move into think tank 6, and I can watch the conversation as it occurred. And I can actually move backwards and forwards in time. I can just move by using the play button. I can go backwards and forwards to see how each of these conversations had evolved. But I can also move into what we call our insights view. And this is something that we were watching while you were chatting as well. And then on the insights view, this gives us a view across all of the conversations happening in all of across all of Thinkscape. In the upper right corner, we have what we call the verbatims, which are the fully formed comments and thoughts that are being selected from different, just to give a moderator and an analyst a real-time view of what's happening. In the upper left corner, the system is actually doing real-time sentiment analysis by an analysis of the language that people are using as they describe these different ideas. Now, in this case, this is a full brainstorming session. So these ideas about toxic waste and meltdowns and costs and things like that, they're not selecting an item from that list. This is a purely brainstormed idea. These are ideas that have been developed by the participants themselves. And here we can see how positively or negatively they're being talked about in the room, in all of their conversations. And we have a variety of other kinds of real-time analytics, including being able to get a sense of what the supporting assertions were and rejecting. And again, all of this is being done in real time. So this is just one of the solutions, one of the tools that our customers can have as they are using Thinkscape. Again, it allows you to go and explore the conversation that has happened afterwards. We've also collected the various transcripts, and we also produce various reports immediately, reports out based off of the information that has been collected. Your session in particular that we did today, we will be processing that data. We will share back with Bella, and Bella, then you can share out with the rest of the group. We will create a demo report, basically a high-level report of the kind of conversation, so you can get an example of what that would look like, so that you'll have an example of what that conversation might look like in report format, and we'll be able to distribute that with you probably next week. We're just juggling a few other timelines at this point.
Great.
That's really all I wanted to mention here in terms of the deliverables on the back end. Bella, if you have questions that you would like to pose, or if there's some questions that you know of from the group, and we can chat about those if you like.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and thanks everyone for your engagement and input so far.
I do know. I'm sorry, Bella. I was just going to say that I saw a note in chat. One of the questions that was posed in chat had a concern about bias and dominant voices, and it's a good one. So if you, I'll just very quickly mention it here. We all know that in-person conversation is heavily susceptible, vulnerable to bias and very much the loudest voice in the room. In some situations, it can also be the highest paid person in the room, certain what we refer to as authority bias. And what winds up happening, though, is by using Thinkscape, those kinds of biases get significantly mitigated. And that's because any of those dominating personalities, loud voices, can only influence the other people in their local room. The amount of domination, the amount of influence that they have is actually limited to just that local group of 4 or 5 people. And so that dominating personality, particularly when you have an anonymous system, is actually fully mitigated from the kind of bias that you would normally have in a large group conversation. Yeah, so anyway, so any kind of biases tend to be very much limited to their local room. And this is true also with, I see, Ash, you mentioned about people who are typing more quickly, or again, any of those kinds of interactive biases are actually being limited by the scope of the numbers of people who are being interacted with. There's Stephen asked about the logic behind having the think tanks, the subrooms. So in this case, this is because, as we said at the very beginning, the research, the science points out that when you have more than 5, 6, 7 people in a conversation, the conversation itself breaks down and needs to be. And so what we do is by putting them into these local conversations, we're able to optimize the productivity, the meaningfulness of the conversation based off of just kind of the numbers, the interpersonal dynamics, not necessarily the content, of course. And so that's the right. And then we use the AI in order to make sure that the ideas are properly shared. Bella, if I'll ask you if you can help me with keeping up with the ideas. I also see some people have raised their hands as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thanks everyone for your questions, and also feel free to put in the chat your reflections of how you think that went, how that was for you functionally. I know everyone had to use desktop for this session rather than mobile, and did anyone try the speech to text microphone, or what do they prefer? Because I think there were some comments and questions as well about people's ability to have an input based on their speed of typing and ability to type, and obviously some people might be dyslexic, etc., etc. But yeah, there's quite a few questions. Marco, did you have your hand raised? Feel free to jump in with your question if you'd like.
Do you prefer that I type in the chat? It's the same for me. I didn't notice that the people were putting the question in the chat. It's the same.
Up to you, Marco.
Otherwise, I can pause here.
Yeah.
Okay, just 3 question reflection. I will try to be pretty fast. First of all, about anonymity. Is a precise choice because I think that in particular parties, in particularly, there could be some advantages, but also some negative stuff. Basically, I would like to know what my representative, also at the local level, say about the stuff. It's important for me also to recognize him or her.
So
the second question is about.
I'll just quickly mention anonymity is completely configurable. As you point out, in some situations, you want to know what everybody's names are. In other situations, anonymity is important. Completely configurable.
Perfect. Then another stuff is conceived as a pure deliberative platform, or is supposed also to came to a decision. Because I was thinking actually with really polarized topic, it will be challenging. For example, also the idea that we think that it's okay, the discussion bring out results, but maybe the results is really conflicted with me. So we know you that are the majority, so I can accept your position, but maybe it's not my position. So that was challenging me when I was not in the wording.
Yeah, so again, how you use the tool, I need to point out, I always remind people that we're just using tools, and you can decide what you want to do with the information depending on what your purpose is. So and as I mentioned, the convergence phase that we had at the end, where we said, here are the top choices, can we come to one? That is, we do not have to do that. That happens to be what we did for this demonstration. It could be pure brainstorming. You can be collecting all the information. In other cases, your group might want to try and come to an answer. So you can use the you can configure the tool depending on what your objectives are. All right, Bella, back to you.
Thanks so much.
You're
We've got
on
a
mute,
few
Bella.
more people putting their hands up. So we've got Evan, then Liz, and Finn will come to you next. But yeah, Evan, thanks for waiting.
Yeah, this is absolutely fantastic, David. I think that this really, my own view, this really has incredible potential. I've already assumed that this will be available, I have to say, within a short time, enabling deliberation at scale. This is exactly what you do in citizens' assemblies. So it really is a virtual model for a citizens' assembly. But it has to be done at scale where every current voter has access to it in order to try and generate the sort of considered voice, the collective will of the population. Now, that's a big ask, but I think absolutely doable. The question is, and I'm asking everyone this, all these things are great ideas. How do you get from where we are to where we would like to be? Any thoughts on that?
Thanks, Evan. Maybe we
What
could
government's going to say, my goodness, this is exactly what we want.
Yeah. No, thanks so much for your comments, Evan. And yeah, maybe we can have that question, just hanging on in the background over us. And if anyone has reflections on that, just put it in the chat. But thanks for that. No, it's definitely, we need to start thinking about how do we get to where we want to be. Liz, thanks for waiting. Do you have a question?
Yeah, my question was about the use of this technology to create a baseline of collective knowledge. If you ask questions that people have no context around, they have no intellectual context, or they have no experience, or they've had no education on the topic, I'm not convinced that however whizzy the technology is, and this is very whizzy and I like it very much, it actually produces a good outcome. So you did a little video at the beginning, animation at the beginning, but one of my desires would be for this technology to be able to link to an educative process before it's used. So if you are going to do any kind of deliberation and you ask a question, let's say we've asked a question about political parties, I am not convinced from the answers that a lot of people have any understanding how political parties work. And unless, and I speak as an ex-co-chair of a political party, there's a lot of people in political parties who don't know how they work, never mind people outside them. So to ask a question about how you change the dynamics of an organization, you have to understand it. You have to understand what its purpose was and how it's ended up where it is, because a lot of people sign up to things, but they're not necessarily, they don't have an understanding of the form or function. And that, I think, is a really important question for the TG, because if you ask a lot of uninformed people, you'll get uninformed answers. And I think that's really important to any discussion of deliberation. The technology is, it's like asking a screwdriver to actually build a house. It can't build a house because it has no plan. So that's my challenge back to you.
I completely, as a maker of screwdrivers, Liz, I completely concur. And I would say that our job is to collaborate with people such as yourselves, as Marco pointed out, that the how you ask the questions, what questions you're asking, of whom you are asking the questions, all of these are incredibly important and equally important considerations when thinking through what your objectives are and what information you would like to get out. Our technology is exactly that, is a technology. It is a tool that can be utilized, and our jobs here today at Unanimous AI is to support organizations that are trying to use it in the best ways. And so we make sure that they are thinking about those variables that you have just described, the who, the what, the how, and the objectives, and that we're employing the technology appropriately. These are important considerations regardless of whatever tool you're using, from screwdrivers to artificial intelligence. And I think your point is well made.
Thanks so much, Liz. Yeah, we've got a couple more hands up. Yeah, Flynn, you've got a written question, but perhaps you'd like to add to that, or yeah, live. Thank you.
Yeah, I was actually just going to essentially, restate the question I already put in the chat, just because it just thought it might be easier. There's a lot going on. But yeah, David and team, thank you so much. That was a really, really fascinating presentation. It's really impressive. But yeah, I suppose the question I'm really curious about is, it seems a really vital aspect to producing effective, representative, and meaningful outputs. And especially when it comes to the scalability of these processes, it seems like one of the most important tenets is the cross-pollination between the groups. And so I'm curious essentially how you create and optimize for that cross-pollination. So like, what do you ask, how does your AI know what to cross-pollinate? How is it selecting those things? How does it know what is interesting? Is there a map tracking the things that are spread and that aren't kind of systemized, or is it maybe earlier days if you're using LLMs to kind of run this process? But yeah, just a reflection, as I think I said as always. I noticed, for example, a couple of points brought into our room which we had already discussed further up. So I'm also, is there like cross analysis with like the discussion that's already happened in the group, and it chooses to fill information that still needs feedback? Anyway, I'm just curious about that system because it's seems pretty vital and something I'm very interested in generally.
Yeah, absolutely. And Flynn, and to everybody, I will acknowledge two things immediately. One is in the few minutes that we have here, it will be impossible to get into the level of depth that will probably satisfactorily answer your question. So I would encourage you to follow up with us offline for that. I would also, so what I will do right now is maybe skate what I just cut across a few wave tops and just quickly note that the objective of the local ThinkBots is to listen and to be able to identify full ideas, the rationales that are being, the assertions that are being raised in support or in rejection of an answer. So there's an answer and there's the rationale that's associated with that answer. That information is also communicated from those local ThinkBots to a central monitoring Thinkscape AI that is keeping track of what all of the conversations are happening in each of the think tanks. And with the intention of doing that, as the term you use, cross-pollination, to make sure that ideas are being shared. So when a group has raised an idea, it has created an idea that is ready for sharing. And then the central Thinkscape identifies a room where it can be introduced or should be introduced to. And the basic dynamic or the basic governing there is to introduce an idea to a room that hasn't been brought up in that room already. So it's interesting to me, and it'd be interesting, we'll take a look as well, but it was interesting to me that you had seen that idea talked about earlier. It would not have been introduced, likely would not have been introduced to your room had it very recently been talked about. But because it hadn't been talked about in some time, it was, in this case, reintroduced to your room. But it was most likely it is typically brought up into think tanks where an idea has not been raised before. The intention is to do as much cross-pollination as possible. And I'll just leave it there. There's a lot more nuance, but that's the intention. So the system is looking at the conversational dynamics. It is making sure that there are ideas to be shared, that some rooms are ready to have ideas shared with them, and the central Thinkscape AI is deciding where to go there. There's obviously a lot more nuance and detail that we can't get into today, but we could feel free to follow up with us offline.
Thanks so much, David, and thanks for that question, Flynn. Yeah, there'll definitely be, we'll be sharing the analysis and further digging deeper into the conversation that we all collectively had in our various rooms. And sort of linked to that point, and Stephen, thanks, you've got your hand up, so thanks for your patience. Just linked to Flynn's point and question in the chat, I see Ash has mentioned as well, about the moral architecture of bots and whether it's configurable, whether any moral standards were being used to judge the activities of these bots. And there's just a comment about Ash feeling that Marvin AI was a bit Elon in his moral architecture and the way that the comments were being. So I don't know, David, you've got any just like the comments on that before we move on to Stephen's question?
We do our best to make sure that there is not a point of view being expressed. I'm glad to hear there's a mention of Marvin. We'll look into that. And we'll look into it. But the intention is that that there is not a particular point of view being supported or expressed. And I think the other thing that I want to make sure that is understood is that the topics, the ideas that are being raised, that are being distributed, are not generated by Thinkscape. They're generated by you. They're generated by the humans, right? And so all we are doing, all Thinkscape is doing, is facilitating that communication and making sure that it's being shared. So appreciate the perspective, the concern that there might have been some bias that was being expressed, and we'll certainly take a look at that.
Thanks so much, David. So Stephen, please feel free to answer your question now, and thanks for your patience there.
Yeah, no problem. I love the system. I think it needs to be extended though. So we ran in the UK parliamentary elections this July with AI Steve, and the key part we focused on was convenience. Because as we know, most real voters, if a politician jumps out in front of them, gives them a leaflet, want to run away immediately, don't want to talk to them. We focused on making it 24/7 available and convenient, and therefore we built an AI avatar that could have a conversation with that individual. So what I love about this is you're taking that one-on-one conversation, which is restrictive. You can only get one feedback from one person at a time, and you can only have the AI interact with them, into a common debate. But I think you've got to focus on voice. And therefore, how are you going to get people to this tool? Can you connect it to Twitter? Can you connect it to Facebook? Can you connect it using voice as a primary driver rather than getting people typing? Because I think typing will restrict you to the political motivated and not the I can't be asked, but I might be willing to have a chat people. And it's a can't be asked, I'm willing to have a chat, I think we need to engage with.
Excellent point, Stephen. Thank you very much. So a couple of notes just for broader context. Thinkscape itself, as a technology, as I mentioned at the outset, is currently in chat, text chat, as you've seen it. Our development roadmap is, as you mentioned, is to bring us to voice and video. And so expect that to hear more about that in 2025. That is just our development timeline at this point. In terms of accessibility, so certainly that'll address accessibility. The important thing here, our focus is on not on the one-on-one convenience that you're describing of a chatbot is I think very important. But we are trying to serve a different function. Our function is to enable human-to-human communication and human-to-human deliberation, and using the technology to facilitate large group meetings, large communication. And that's our laser focus. Now, I will also say that the reason we're here talking to you today is because we believe that Thinkscape, which by the way has only been out of beta now a few months, has only been commercially available a few months, is starting to get interest from those of you in civic engagement and deliberative democracy. And as such, we are starting to dip our toes into those waters to explore how it could be utilized for these purposes. So we are as excited to hear from you to get that guidance about where and how these solutions can be applied for best impact. And so we're looking forward to having these kinds of additional conversations.
And I applaud what you're doing, because I think the group conversation to help shape policies is really, really important. I just think the convenience is another point. one warning, we were stopped by OpenAI using their technology halfway through the campaign and had to switch because a lot of the LLMs are introducing quite arbitrary policies about what you can and can't do with AI at the moment. So just be warned that you may get hit upon that as soon as they know that you're using it in a political environment.
It's a very dynamic environment for sure.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Bella?
It's so good to have you here. Yeah, thank you, David. Thanks. We've got Omer with his hand up, but just before we get to that, and we're coming to the end, so any final questions, this is your last chance to present it live. But we do have people in the room who, you know, they've mentioned that they are members of political parties, maybe they were ex-candidates, etc. So would love to hear in the chat, you know, your reflections being a political party member yourself, actively or ex, having had that chat. And I think ultimately Thinkscape showed us that the group consensus was no, political parties can't be replaced by AI, but a lot of the principles or features that we want to see in parties could be replaced by AI. But just, yeah, for those party members in the group, we'd just love to hear your final reflections there. And Omer, over to you, and thank you so much for your patience.
Cool. Thank you so much, David, and the rest of you guys, and everyone actually for sharing all your sort of thoughts and insights. I wanted to, I guess, ask something about one of the points that you just mentioned in your last answer, which is about the purpose of this platform. You said it's mainly to facilitate person-to-person kind of interactions. But what we found in some of these like demo conversations we had is that some of these AI agents just like chime into conversations way too much, like too frequently, too many messages. It kind of felt like it was, facilitating some cognitive overload issues, at least on my end, where I struggled to keep up with the chat, and most of them were like, you know, AI generated rather than from humans. So I guess I wanted to ask two things. One is there any way to like reduce the frequency at which those agents kind of chime into conversations? And two, like, is the main point of like using this platform so that participants kind of coherently respond to chatbot prompts, or is it for participants rather to interact with one another and just have that chatbot prompt as like something that kind of aids in the conversation's quality?
Thanks very much for that feedback, Omer. It is one of the, believe it or not, one of the most difficult technical problems is finding the proper communication pace for a natural and comfortable communication for those kinds of AI interactions. So we're constantly tuning it. Yes, there are, it is configurable, but our ultimate goal is to make it so that it is dynamically responsive to a natural flow, right? So that it is not overbearing. And so that is something that we continue to work on. Ultimately, and this dovetails with your other question, ultimately, the interaction of the AI bot, we don't try and hide who the AI bot is, but the interaction of the AI bot should ultimately be as natural as possible. That it really ultimately should be that it just appears to be another member of the conversation, and that the ideas that they're expressing just happen to be informed by other groups, right? Ideas that have been raised in other groups. So what you are describing, Omer, is really very much an interface and tuning that we continue to work on optimizing and making as comfortable as possible. So appreciate that feedback. We will do better.
Thanks so much.
Oh, and then the other thing I just want to mention is I just want to be clear. Our goal is to facilitate large group conversation. Ultimately, what that also means is being able to facilitate the small group conversation, right? And so it is less one-to-one, Omer, and more one-to-many. And that is our intention, is really to enable that one-to-many. So Isabel, I know, Bella, that we're pressed up against time.
Yes.
Here, so I do want to make sure that I'm just going to say one more time that you can reach out to us at thinkscape.ai for more information, or unanimous.ai, and you can gather more information there. be happy to have additional conversations with you as appropriate. And I think, Bella, if you're able to capture this chat and make that available to us, we'll be able to review those questions following the session as well.
Yes, absolutely. So we do have a couple more hands up, but we are at time. But I think overall this has been, a brilliant efficiency and organization. So thank you everyone for your diligence on that, and Sean especially. Just special shout out to Sean, because we've had a lot of one-to-one calls in preparation for this session, and I really appreciate Sean's support in helping to put this together. Thanks. We have a couple of hands up. Yeah, but I don't know. So Marco and Florian, you had your hands up. Florian, you've typed a question in the chat. I wonder whether I'll just read out your questions live, and then David and Sean and the team can respond separately post the session by email if that's easier. But just whilst we're here, happy to have you ask a question live. Marco, would you like to go ahead quickly? And then we'll
No, actually, it wasn't a proper question. The point is that we focus on the tech discussion that is extremely interesting about the tools. And so about, I don't know, we can speak about fake news within this system. We can speak about how to better organize them. You develop a really fantastic tools. But talking about political parties, the main discussion is about willing of the political parties. I don't think that tools such as Plaza Podemos in Spain or Labour Policy Forum in the UK doesn't work because the tech doesn't support this type of discussion. I think the problem was that basically the party at the moment don't care about this. So this is the main point, actually. Particularly speaking about political parties. This is completely different. We go in other type of democratic innovation, such as citizen assembly. We can add some mixed participatory budget that include also deliberation in this type of stuff. In this case, we are talking about something that could be faced in also tech discussion. In political parties, I think that we need to make a step behind, because the problem is not the tech, is the other type of problem. I think that this is really important to consider about politics.
Thanks, Marco. Great. Well, and I think Florian's questions in the chat about making this tool, this platform available to civil organizations for free. And I know that's something that a lot of people in this room will be interested in, coming from the academic and practitioner and third sector space. And then some questions as well about pricing for this product. So that can definitely be followed up separately. I think Sean's shared his email there, sean@unanimous.ai, so please follow up with after. But otherwise, thank you so much, David, for facilitating and presenting and showing us the back end of this, and also how Unanimous AI came about, and the Swarm AI's inspiration from nature. It's been wonderful to have you present at this session for the community, and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much, and I hope everyone enjoyed and everyone had a say and was enlightened and learned something new today. And let's definitely continue this conversation. Like I said, we will be progressing this topic into further sessions. And if you join the WhatsApp group, we will share the recording and analysis of this discussion as soon as we can. So thank you so much, David, and thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day and week.